Well, another alternative is, the best way to ensure the rapid growth of the panda population, which it used to be considered endangered. It's now vulnerable, so that's a step up. If we breed pandas as a source for meat, then there'll be loads of pandas because it'll become a profitable and tasty staple of the American diet.
Right. It's like, why are pigs and cows and chickens never going to become extinct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, while I don't agree with you morally, I do practically agree with you that it would work.
What's the morality of eating pandas?
Like, I don't know. I would just feel so much worse eating a panda than eating a cow. And I understand why that's, from some perspective, kind of absurd. Like they're like kind of equivalent in terms of size. And
a panda would eat you if he had the chance.
You think so? Yeah. I don't know about that, Chris. Well, pandas mostly eat bamboo, although they do occasionally eat meat if they're starving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I don't know.
And I recently learned from the Joe Rogan podcast that apparently black bears that their diet's mostly blueberries are delicious.
Blueberries are delicious, or black bears?
The black bears that eat the blueberries.
Yeah, I haven't eaten a bear since when I played Oregon Trail.
Well, Davy Crockett, he killed him a bear when he was only 3.
Yes.
Davy Crockett. He was the king of the wild frontier. But we don't allow kings in America, so we got rid of him.
Yes, we did. All right, so that's pandas.
That's pandas.
Moving on.
We don't need Shelley. What does she add to this? Nothing. Not a thing. God, what do we talk about next? Oh, my God.
Well, I think that we are facing the end of, I hope, the end of a really, really horrible era in terms of U.S.-China relations, and potentially the beginning of a new, somewhat less bad era, which is the death of diplomat Henry Kissinger, who was sort of the first American to go to China to jumpstart relations. He went in, I think, 1971 on a secret trip and met with Zhou Enlai and tried to move things in a direction to warm relations with the Chinese Communist Party as a way to counterbalance the threat of the Soviet Union. Obviously, we've seen the trajectories of these things. And now, 50 years later, it's like, oops,
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think you could make an argument that maybe at the time with the Vietnam War going on, with the Cold War with the Soviet Union, there may have been a geopolitical strategic use for aligning with the PRC. But that did not need to carry on. Clinton did not need to normalize trade relations.
Right. I mean, this is a problem with politics. Is there's a lot of inertia. It's sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. In the case of this, it was very hard to change that moment of inertia. But then once it was changed on this trajectory of warming China relations, it just never stopped. Right. And so even as it became increasingly clear that this relationship was not as good for the U.S. as it was for China, and in many cases bad for the U.S., it still continued on that trajectory.
I mean, it's what cost Taiwan's recognition from the U.S. Part of the agreement was that the U.S. recognize the PRC instead of the Republic of China as the legitimate government of China.
Yeah. And the inertia for that continued because decades later, the U.S. still doesn't recognize that Taiwan is an independent country.
Oh, we don't want to anger China.
Yeah.
The great thing that came out of all this talk about Kissinger is I saw this video. We can put it up on screen where Mao is meeting Kissinger's wife, who was this tall socialite. Oh, Matt, help.
Socialite?
Thank you. I don't get good sleep because I don't believe in beds and sofas. But yeah, it's hilarious. He's like, she's so tall, and they're both short. It's very funny. as the
Yes.
audience can see because they get to see this video.
When there's
you know?
one person who's tall and the other short, it's very funny. It's like the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
That's right.
It is inherently a funny movie just because of that visual.
And I am so mad they never made the sequel. Did you hear about this?
No, what?
I think what would have come out is that there was a third one, and that was going to be played by Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was just guessing that. I was like, what's the most absurd twin pair to have at that era?
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been hilarious. It's like we could have had that movie. We could have had Gremlins 3. This
all the sequels
history
that
went
get
off.
made.
Yeah.
And yet we get 3 50 Shades of Grey movies.
That's true.
Yeah.
Fast and Furious X, sponsored by Twitter.
Is it?
No. I think there's also an Exorcist X.
Yeah.
People like X. Like, why?
There's too many.
It's such an extreme letter in the alphabet.
Extreme?
Yeah. I use that purposefully.
Okay. So we're talking about
the launch of China Uncensored X, the newest and most extreme version of China Uncensored.
It's like us talking about China issues while snowboarding.
Yeah.
Down like the Alps, from helicopters.
Yeah. We jump out of helicopters with machine guns and snowboard down, shooting wild boars.
Those two things in the same place would be very extreme.
This is great.
Yeah.
So much better than having Shelley keep us on track.
Yeah. So anyway, Henry Kissinger's dead.
Yeah, and largely I don't know. I don't know where the engagement school is going because it seems like the Biden administration, the engagement school is kind of winning the idea that we need to have some kind of engagement with China.
Yeah. And yet there's a lot of inertia from the Trump era, which is that by and large, Biden has continued.
And he still calls him a dictator.
Yeah. Oh, that was such a great video where Biden calls Xi Jinping. He's like, oh, well, he is a dictator. He's the leader of a communist country. And then Antony Blinken was like, oh.
But just like seeing Xi Jinping at APEC and seeing that room full of business leaders like Tim Cook, Big Pharma,
right.
Like all standing up and giving him a standing ovation. Like that's pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Big Pharma is probably happy about this newest pneumonia as well, right?
Yes.
It's just opportunity. Yeah.
And make a buck.
So
yeah. The other thing that came out of APEC is I kind of think it blew up Newsom's shot at being a presidential candidate.
Don't underestimate the power of people to fail upwards.
Well, I think just like I know Newsom was trying to position himself as like a potential candidate if Biden doesn't run or
right.
dies. I don't know.
But
like the amount of the PR disaster of like San Francisco being cleaned up, all the poop cleaned up, the homeless shuffled away for Xi Jinping was just such bad optics. I don't think a presidential campaign could survive that.
It's incredible how much they cleaned up San Francisco ahead of Xi Jinping's visit. And because I was there only last year, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but like I was walking through downtown, like UN Plaza, and I saw in the 20 minutes, I saw 2 different homeless men overdose.
Wow.
And like by the time I saw the second one, the first one was being carried off in an ambulance or a fire ambulance. And
fire ambulance.
Well, no, it was like SF fire department, but it was an ambulance because the fire department has their own system as well. That's not the point. The point is, it was horrible, and it wasn't just the overdoses. It was just so many homeless people, and they were given showers and food and everything. And what blew my mind is there were a lot of these people in these like vests that were like sort of some kind of social workers or community workers whose job it is to kind of like keep people safe or like, call 911 if there's an overdose or like make sure people had access to the showers. But their job wasn't to like make things better for the city or even long-term for any of these people. It was just like to like help them continue to be homeless. And that was, I would say, a policy failure. And this cleanup shows that it could have been done. And you're right, like that looks really bad for Governor Gavin Newsom. But think about the other things he has survived, right? He survived a recall election after horrible mishandling of COVID, including incidents like eating at the French Laundry, which is like the super fancy French restaurant, with a bunch of people unmasked during the height of COVID after saying people shouldn't go to restaurants. He closed all the public schools because of COVID and yet sent his children to private schools, which were still open. And he also did such a bad job with masks, he ended up having to buy $3 billion worth of Chinese masks.
Yeah, he's very close with China.
It is like he's made a lot of mistakes, right? And he survived the recall election, which is to say, people still might think that he is the least bad candidate.
I don't think so. Because with the recall election, you were talking about within California, and there are some crazy parts of California. Being able to sell that to the entirety of the United States, I think is a much taller order.